morning everyone, welcome to Writing for Thursday. Let's begin with some practice of our letter and sound cards. Zippy zebra z, z, z. Fat frogs fishing f, f, f. Teapot tipping t, t, t. Umbrella up Rabbit reading Numbat nibbling Orange octopus Empty eggshells Good job. Let's go check our learning intention and success criteria. We are learning that writers use words to describe. Our success criteria is: I can record what I could see, hear and smell in a habitat. This week we'll be focusing on describing words. Describing words are words that you can use to help your reader imagine what you're writing about. They are also very effective at adding more detail to your writing. So far, we've mostly been describing how different things look, but there are other things that you can describe. You can describe how things smell, how things sound, and how things feel. We can use our senses to add detail and more describing words to our writing. By describing these things, it makes it even easier for your readers to imagine what you're writing about, because they can close their eyes and think about all the different things that they can hear, see, feel, and smell. Today, we're going to focus on what we can see, hear, and smell. We're going to use our rainforest drawing and record those details. I'll show you now how I do it, and after that, you can have a go. So I'm going to imagine that I am in this rainforest. I'm going to close my eyes and think about what I might be able to see, what I might be able to hear, and also what can I smell. Can you do the same now? Can you close your eyes? Imagine that you're in this rainforest or in your rainforest. What can you see? What can you hear? And what can you smell? Well done. To record what we can see, hear and smell, we're going to use a Y chart. I'll show you now how I make my Y chart. So I've got a new piece of paper and I'm going to draw a big Y, capital Y. Now you can see I've got three parts. I've got this part up here, and this part over here. I'm going to write the word see, S, E, two E's, making that long E sound. That says see. I'm going to write here, up here. Here, that you can hear something, is H. And then it's actually got the word ear in it. Ear is E, A, R. You hear through your ear. Let's put a bubble around that one. See, hear, and smell. Smell. Smoke, smell. S and an M, that's our blend. S, M, L, L, E, and L. That's right, L, and there's two. Smell. Bubble around that one as well. Okay, now I'm ready to start thinking about and recording what I can see, hear and smell in my rainforest. I can imagine that if I was in a rainforest, I could smell some damp soil. Damp means a little bit wet, because in a rainforest, a lot of things are a little bit wet. Damp. D. What letter makes the D sound? D. D. A. D. A. A. D. A. M. D. Amp. P. Pig. Damp. Soil. S. Finger space. Oil. O. O. Oil. Oil. I and L. L. Good job. Damp soil. I'm also imagining the smell of some sweet flowers, just like the ones that the butterfly goes to get some nectar. Let's write sweet flowers here. Swing. Sweet. S and W is our blend at the start of sweet. S and W and then E. Those two E's make the long E sound. Eat. What's the last letter in sweet, do you think? It's the letter that makes the T sound. T, that's right. Sweet flowers. Can you see a flower on our blends chart? There it is. Flowers. Full. F L. Sweet. Finger space. F and an L. Sweet flowers. Ow. O and W are making the ow sound in flowers. Flowers. E and R making the sound. And then lucky last is an S to make it flowers. Sweet flowers. So there's my damp soil and sweet flowers. I actually found some in my garden. There's a sweet flower and there's some damp soil. Let's move on to hear. What can you hear in the rainforest? What sort of animals might be there? What sounds do they make? What sounds do the plants make as the wind or the rain goes over them? Is there a waterfall? What does that sound like? What about when you're moving through the rainforest and your feet are walking along the ground? What sort of sound does that make? Do you step on anything? I'm going to write that I can hear some chirping frogs. I'm imagining that sound. Do you know it? When frogs are chirping? Let's have a go. Ch. Cheese. Chirping. C and a H. Here's my here. Let's write it over here. C and a H. Chirping. It sounds like it's going to be an E and an R next. Chirping. It's actually an I and an R in chirping. Chirp. We know that one. That's P. Chirp. Ing. Do you remember what 3 letters make that ing sound? E, I, and then N, and a G. Chirping. Chirping frogs. Let's find our frog. For F and an R make that fr sound. Chirping frogs. Finger space. Frogs. Can you say it very slowly? Frogs. Ogs. O. G. G for goat. And then frogs. S. I can hear chirping frogs. In my rainforest, I can also hear some buzzing cicadas. They are so loud. Can you hear them too? Let's write that next in our hear section. Buzzing. B. Capital letter because it's the start of a new idea in my here column. Buzzing. Up. Umbrella. Up. Z. What letter makes the Z sound? It's one of my favorite letters because it makes a funny vibration on your tongue. Z. Like a bee. Buzzing bee. Zebra. That's right. Buzzing. There's 2 Z's in there. Buzzing. Oh, that's that ing again, isn't it? Chirping. Buzzing. So it's an I, an N, and a G. Buzzing. Buzzing cicadas. Now it sounds like a S, doesn't it? It's actually a C making that sound. Cicadas. C and an I making that sound. Cicadas. K. C's making the K sound now. A. Do you hear A saying its own name? Cicadas. D. 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 Cicadas. It's actually an A and then an S on the end. Buzzing cicadas. Next, let's do what we can see in the rainforest. So while you're imagining yourself in the rainforest, imagine that you open your eyes. What can you see around you? You might use your picture to help you with this one because you have drawn what you can see. I'm going to write that I can see the streaming sunlight because when you're in a rainforest, sometimes the sun streams through all those trees and the canopy. Streaming sunlight. Start. S and T. Streaming. Good job. Streaming. This is like our word the other day. Stream. This is the same word, streaming, with the ing on the end. The E and the A made that long E sound. Stream. Monkey. Streaming. I-N-G, make that ing sound. Streaming. sunlight. I've run out of room over here. I don't think I can fit sunlight in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and write sunlight here. Sunlight. S. Up. Umbrella. Up. Numbers. Sun. There's the word sun, and now I want to write light. Light. Ooh. And this word can be two words separately, sun and light, but it also can be combined together to make the word sunlight. Sunlight. It. Can you hear the I? This sound, it, is I, G, and a H. You can't hear the G or the H, but can you hear the last sound? I, T. Sun, light. Streaming sunlight. I'm also going to write that I can see my blue butterfly from my drawing. Blue, block, blue, B and an L, is that blend? B and an L, blue. It sounds like it might be two O's, doesn't it? Blue. It's actually a U and an E in blue. Blue butterflies. I can see blue butterflies. B. Up. U, umbrella, up. T, good job. Two T's in butterflies. Butter. E and R, making that sound. That says butter. Now I want to write flies to make it butterflies. Full, F and an L. Eyes. Do you hear the I saying its own name? Eyes. The silent E there, you can't hear it. And then there's a S on the end to make it more than one butterfly. I can see streaming sunlight. I might put a little star next to that. Blue butterflies, I'll put a star next to that too, so you can tell the different ideas. I can hear chirping frogs. I can hear buzzing cicadas. I can smell damp soil and sweet flowers. In all of my ideas, can you see my describing words? Sweet is describing the flowers. Damp is describing the soil. Buzzing is describing the cicadas. Chirping is describing the frogs. Streaming is describing the sunlight. And blue is describing the butterflies. When you do your Y chart of your see, hear and smell, see if you can also include those describing words to add more detail to your writing and help your readers imagine that they're in your rainforest. Now it's your turn to have a go at drawing your why chart in your book and writing what you can see, hear, and smell in your rainforest habitat. Before you go today, you might want to listen to the story I'm going to read called Rainbow Magic. This story is by Shirley Barber and it's about a girl who goes into a rainforest. I thought I'd share this story with you because it has some really nice pictures about the rainforest. Can you see that? There's a waterfall and some ferns. I thought it might help you imagine what you can see, hear, and smell in the rainforest. Let's start. Rainbow Magic. Once upon a time, there was an old lady called Grand Tibbet. She lived in an old house on the edge of the forest with her granddaughter Annie Tibbet and little dog Bozo. There's little dog and there's Annie. Around the house was Grand Tibbet's pretty rose garden, and around the rose garden was a grassy meadow that went right to the edge of the dark fern forest. Early in the morning, the deer and the fawns would come out of the forest and eat the grass in the meadows. Sometimes Annie could get quite close to a fawn, but little dog Bozo would run out and bark at the big deer. "One day they won't run away," Annie scolded. "Then you'll be sorry." But little dog Bozo only laughed. There he is. When the weather turned cold, Grand Tibbet's knee joints stiffened and her elbows creaked and everything that could ache began to ache. Then Gran would sigh and sadly say, "I'm getting old and I'm good and ready for my heavenly reward, but who will take care of you when I'm gone to glory?" Annie and little dog Bozo were not really worried because they thought Gran would go on being Gran forever. They built houses of dried fern fronds and made leaf boats and sailed them on the still water. A big fish lived in the pool, and if they kept very still, he rose to look at them. But Bozo always barked, and with a splash, the fish would be gone again. I think I can see a bird in that tree. Looks like a peacock or a lyrebird, I think. Probably a lyrebird. Some more birds here. Some frogs in the water. Lots of animals in the rainforest. On showery days, Annie sometimes saw a rainbow so close she called to Gran, "Shall I run to see if I can find the fairy's crock of gold at the end of the rainbow?" But Gran said, "You keep away from rainbows, Annie. They are very funny things. You can get caught under rainbows and never come home again." One day, when Annie and little dog Bozo were playing in the fern forest, it began to rain. They crept into a hollow tree over here. Soon the sun shone again, and suddenly a big, beautiful rainbow came curving out of the sky and touched the mossy ground in front of them. They stared in astonishment. Just inside the rainbow was a crock filled with gold. Here's our rainforest. The book talked about the mossy ground. I wonder if you can smell that mossy ground. I wonder if you can see the raindrops dripping from the flowers and the leaves. I wonder if you can hear the rain pitter-pattering on the ground. "Oh," cried Annie, "what a lovely present to take home for Gran. Do you think she should go under the rainbow?" Her Gran told her not to go under the rainbow. She forgot all about Gran Tibbet's warning, and she and Little Dog Bozo ran to pick up the crock of gold. But as soon as they went under the rainbow, something very strange happened. They grew smaller and smaller and changed into 2 little fairy folk. Look, she's got wings. He's got wings too. Both Annie and Little Dog Bozo now had wings and were so small that the grass blades were as tall to them as trees. Wow. "Oh, Bozo," cried Annie, "how will we find our way home to Gran and tell her what has happened to us?" She sat down under a toadstool and began to cry. Little Dog Bozo tried to fly with his new wings, but instead he fell down head over paws into a violet bed. Annie couldn't help laughing. "We won't be able to fly home till we've had some practice," she said. "Come along, Bozo. We'll have to walk." The crock of gold, which had looked so big through the rainbow, was small now. So Annie put it into her lunch bag and off they set. They walked and walked until they met a family of deer. To the 2 fairy folk, the deer were as big as mountains, the biggest deer in the whole world. Little Dog Bozo ran out and barked at them as he had always done. But these deer didn't run away. The smallest fawn frightened Bozo, so he hid behind Annie. "We must go home another way," she said. So this time the deer are not running away from the little dog. Wow, can you see all the flowers and the ferns in the rainforest? Look how many trees there are in the background. I wonder if you can hear the wind rustling through those trees. They came to a deep, dark pool with a huge fish swimming in it. "Is that the fish we used to watch?" whispered Annie to Bozo. "He looks big enough to eat us now. How shall we get across?" Just then a frog came out from his moss-covered house under the bank and offered to ferry them across the water. He's got a boat made out of bark, a leaf and a stick. And he's using another stick to paddle the boat along. "What a nice boat," Annie said to Bozo. "It reminds me of something. Why, I do believe it's one of those boats we made when we were playing here. Now we know what became of them. The frogs took them." When they reached the other bank, she thanked the frog and gave him a biscuit from her lunch bag. Do you see that dragonfly in the rainforest? And the big pool? And the ferns draping over the pool? And the moss? The sun went down and the forest filled with shadows. Annie and Little Dog Bozo began to feel frightened. Suddenly, a family of mice came scurrying along the path, scaring Bozo. But the mice were friendly and warned the 2 new fairy folk that the big wild cat was out hunting. "Hurry, he's coming," they said. "Follow us." There's the cat. And there's the mice down here. So Annie and little dog Bozo went home with the mice for supper. They had grasshopper pie and toasted midges, and Annie broke up some biscuits to give to the baby mice. Then they all went to sleep together, tucked up small and warm in a soft bed of thistledown. When the moon rose, the mice ran out to dance in the moonlight, but Annie and little dog Bozo did not wake till sunrise. Look at that bed, so soft. They're so sleepy. Next morning, the two new fairy folk set off on their long walk home. But before long, they realized they were quite lost. The sun grew hotter and hotter, and the ground grew damper and damper. Annie was admiring the beautiful flowers all around them, and little dog Bozo was splashing through pools and frisking ahead when, "Help, help, help!" he screamed. He was caught fast in the sticky leaf of a sundew and simply couldn't pull free. Luckily, Mr. Prickles, looks like an echidna, came rumbling and snuffling along. Annie was very frightened, but Mr. Prickles looked down at poor little dog Bozo and laughed. Then he rooted him out with his long nose and went off chuckling and snuffling along the track. "There are so many dangers when you're small," sighed Annie. "If only we knew how to fly." A bluebird flew down beside them. The bluebird? And Annie asked him, "Please, could you show us how to fly home?" The bird said he didn't know how to teach the fairy folk to fly, but he said they could come and stay the night with his family. So Annie and little dog Bozo went home to the bluebird's nest and had tea. They had moth cakes and ant cookies and drank tea out of flower cups. Annie broke up the last of her biscuits and gave it to the baby birds. Then they all sat on a wild rose branch and sang songs till it was time for bed. Next day, the bluebird said he had found a wise old Mr. Longlegs who knew almost everything about everything. He led Annie and Bozo to Mr. Longlegs, who looked at them thoughtfully when he heard their story. "I think you'd better meet the fairy king and queen and all the other fairy folk," he said. "Little folk just like yourselves live in the ferny glade by the waterfall, just down the path." Annie and Bozo felt so happy to know there were other little people just like themselves. They thanked the bluebird and the wise old bird and ran towards the waterfall, which sparkled between the trees. But suddenly, that wicked wild cat pounced on little dog Bozo and was about to eat him when... "Stop that at once," a voice commanded. "Put down that fairy person." It was the fairy king. The cat sulkily put down the little dog Bozo and slunk away. Then the fairy king led them to the fairy court, where they met the fairy queen. In the ferny glade were gathered all those who had gone under rainbows at one time or another. The king explained that because Annie and Bozo had not listened to Grand Tibbet's warning, they would now be fairy folk forever and ever. They must learn to be good fairy folk, just like the others. Then all the fairies, elves, pixies, and funny things came forward to greet them. Look at that waterfall in the rainforest. What can you hear? Can you hear the water crashing down the waterfall? Annie and Bozo had flying lessons with a new friend, Funny Thing Beetle. Mrs. Rabbit taught them what was good to eat and what was not, and lots of other useful things, like where to find honey and how to make flower seed cookies. An old gnome showed the new fairy folk how to build a house in a tree, and Annie and Little Dog Bozo soon built a beautiful little home. An old gnome showed the new fairy folk how to build a house in a tree, and Annie and Little Dog Bozo soon built a beautiful little home. Funny Thing Beetle failed his house building test when his house fell down, so Annie and Little Dog Bozo let him share their home because they felt so sorry for him. That's very kind, isn't it? I think that was his house down here. It's fallen over. At last, Annie asked the Fairy King if they could visit Grand Tibbet. The King and Queen wanted to see Grand's rose garden, so all the court winged their way through the fern forest till they came to Grand Tibbet's old house. Gran was sitting in the twilight, feeling very sad. She had given up all hope of ever seeing Annie and Little Dog Bozo again. Suddenly, she looked up and saw a tiny little Annie and a weeny little dog Bozo alight upon her veranda rail. Behind them, all the fairies fluttered down to picnic in her rose garden. "Look, Gran," cried Annie, "we're safe after all, but we have to be fairy folk forever and ever. We're well and happy, and we've brought a present for you, the crock of gold we found under the rainbow." So Annie and Little Dog Bozo and their friend Funny Thing Beetle lived with the fairy folk forever, but they often came to talk to Gran while the fairy court picnicked in her rose garden. Gran stopped worrying about who would look after Annie and Little Dog Bozo after she had gone to glory, because she knew that now they could look after themselves. And what about the crock of gold? Of course, it was only a fairy-sized crock of gold, so Gran set it on her mantelpiece in a tiny glass case, just to prove that fairy folk really did live in the fern forest, and that there really was a crock of gold to be found under the rainbow. Have a really wonderful day, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.